you so much for joining me with this session of Writing Your Next Chapter. My name is Denise Sutter. I'm a life transformation, career, and wellness coach. I'm also the author of my story, editing it all the time and evolving it all the time. That wasn't always the case. You know, as a child, it's interesting. I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do in terms of my next chapter in writing my story. And I remember thinking, this course was back in the 70s, that, oh, Russian kids had it so easy because they're told what to do to be a ballerina or a cosmonaut or whatever the case may be. And that obviously was not the case. That was just my perspective because I was so overwhelmed with the thought of what to do and what my book is going to look like. What is my story going to look like? And then, then it comes to college and you have to pick a major. Oh my gosh. And I defaulted to something I was good at. And my dad was good at it. And he made a career at it. And so I was a math major. Yeah, that didn't last long. That wasn't a good fit for me. It was too much. And finally, after changing my major many times, I landed in a hospitality field. And I actually was quite successful at it, but it was never fulfilling. It never was something I did want to write a chapter about. It was just kind of checking the boxes. And so finally, a good friend of mine kind of had a really good chat, heart-to-heart chat with her. And she convinced me to do what I'd talked about doing for many years. And that was going back to get my master's degree in adult learning. And that is when I do believe that I truly started to author my story. Prior, I was waiting for other people to tell me what to do. I was wanting other people to be the author, and I would just, fill the order. I'd do what they told me. And now, once I got that master's degree, all of a sudden I'm like, now I'm starting to feel fulfilled. Now I'm starting to feel like, oh, I'm owning this. And so I had a really successful career in the learning and development realm. I actually launched my coaching and consulting practice about a year and a half ago, which is pretty scary, but I'm loving it, every minute of it. And the bottom line, I'm discovering that my passion is all about helping people write their stories. And I've had that passion ever since I was trying to figure out what I was supposed to be doing. And so finally, I've revisited that passion. I've unveiled it after it being buried for so long and said, okay, it's my turn to help others and to do what I was actually meant to do. So why all that? That just tells you a little bit about who I am and why I wrote this presentation. It also sets a frame in terms of one of the things that we're not going to be spending time on today are things like LinkedIn and resume writing. Those are tools that so many people are out there, so many talented folks can help you with those technical tools, which are so critically important. What I want to focus on is you at the core. And this is what has helped me so that I can write my chapters and write my story. And that is really paying attention to who I am at the core. And if you don't pay attention to who you are at the core, then it makes it very difficult to be truly fulfilled. It makes it very difficult to be truly successful and to grow and evolve as an individual and write an amazing and authentic story. How many times do people step into positions or careers or businesses or whatever because somebody else wanted them to do it? So this is about you. This session is all about you, 100% about you. So I hope you're ready. I hope you have some ability to take some notes because I'd love for you to reflect along the way. I'm going to pop in a couple of chat functions because I'd love to hear your thoughts as we go through this. But if you're ready, we're going to get started. So as I mentioned, it was my journey that fueled this. And as I reflect back on my journey and my story that's in writing, we're not done yet, I recognize there were really 5 key elements that have helped me along the way to write this story. And the first is down here at the bottom, at the root of the tree, self-care. We'll talk about that in a moment. Clarity, vision, putting yourself in a place of most potential, and then receiving. Now, the thing I want to be clear about in terms of this visual image is this is not a linear model. It's a framework, and I tend to move around it quite a lot. However, at the core of it and at the root is the self-care piece. That is the one piece I would say that you need to start working on first before you can work on all these other elements. It doesn't mean it has to be fully finished. None of these are things where you have to fully finish them, because I feel like when it comes to writing your story and writing your next chapter, you're constantly evolving it, and you're constantly editing it and adding a new chapter and a new subchapter and so on and so forth. So it is something that you will move around a lot in terms of a model. But this is our framework for today that I've built this presentation on and that we're going to be walking through. So let's get started. This first one, self-care. Don't know whether you anticipated that self-care was going to be a part of this discussion or not, but it is your foundation. You hear people say an awful lot that if you don't care for yourself, you cannot care for others. That is so true. It is also true that if you don't care for yourself, you cannot flourish and grow. If you are constantly pouring yourself into other things, there's nothing left for you. Now, this is actually truly a personal story for me that I discovered. I've always been a hard worker. My family has always been hard workers. It's just kind of part of our makeup and our wiring. And so when I went out in industry, I took that same approach. Then there came a time when I was in a corporate world where it didn't seem to matter what I did. I didn't fit in. I didn't feel like I fit in. It seemed like whatever I did, it wasn't enough. There had been a lot of leadership changes, and all of a sudden, my world that I had known and I was very comfortable in and I was being very successful in was just blown apart. And so what did I do? In true Denise fashion, I poured more of myself into it. Why not work harder, right? That'll fix it. No, it didn't. It actually made things so much worse, because then now I'm hurting my own health. I wasn't sleeping well because I was so stressed out. Actually, wasn't sleeping much at all. I wasn't eating right. I was drinking way too much wine. I wasn't working out, or I wasn't working out vigorously. I was checking the box on that. I was gaining weight. I wasn't making good decisions. I was not seeing all the options, and you can just sense where this is going, right? It was a miserable story. I was not taking care of myself, and because I was not taking care of myself, I was digging a very deep and dark hole for myself. Then I started working with a coach, and I remember the very first session, I just met her. She wanted to talk about self-care, and I wanted nothing to do with it. Luckily, I listened to her, and it took me a couple months. I get a bit stubborn at times. And when I started focusing on self-care, everything else started to come together. When I started really paying attention to my own health, when I started paying attention to my sleep, when I started paying attention to my nourishment, when I started paying attention to my workouts, it was amazing how many other things started to fall into place and how many other things I had the energy to do. And so that is why we start this framework with the foundation of self-care. And so when you think about writing your next chapter, whatever that chapter is going to be, make sure that you start with a foundation, a very, very strong foundation of self-care. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to open it up to a chat function. And hopefully you guys can all access the chat function. And if you could, I'm betting you guys have tons of self-care practices that you use every single day. And I'd love for you to type a couple of them into the chat box to share with the greater group. What are you doing from a self-care perspective so that you can flourish and grow and write this amazing next chapter. Go ahead and type it into the chat box and make sure you send it to everybody. Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. Exercising every day, outside and walking, great. Meditation or podcast, they're great. Excellent. Read something to start each day. Beautiful. Good. Sleep. I can definitely echo that. Sleep is critical. Very good. Spiritual readings and dogs. Yes, play. Wake up and read positive things. Wonderful. Good. Anything else? I'm sensing a pattern here. This is all very positive stuff, right? And all of that is really important, especially in the current climate where there's a lot of negative energy floating around. And I know one of the things I started doing when everything started hitting in March was I tapered how much news I watch and how much I read on social media. So when you think in terms of self-care practices, I love everything that you guys have put out on the chat board. Thank you for that. In addition to the things that you're doing, also want to consider the things to either minimize or to stop doing because they're draining your energy. And so that kind of awareness of where is your energy at. So all of these things can help you with your self-care. And what I tell folks also when it comes to self-care is just be aware. It's not a competition. There's so many times when people talk about whether they want to lose weight or they want to, run a 5K or whatever the case may be, that they're doing it because somebody else is doing it, or they're doing it because, they want to be better than their sibling and whatnot. And here's the thing, that's not sustainable. It can be fun for short-term one-off thing, of course, but when you're looking about long-term self-care practices, you do you. Start with where you're at. And if where you're at is in walking the neighborhood, a couple laps every week, that's great. Do it. Do what works for you that you can sustain and continue forward. And great, thank you, Sandra, for your latest post. I think that's, again, it's another good stop, right? Like, what are you stopping or slowing down or pausing? And all of those things make a difference in terms of really making sure that you've got the energy to put towards yourself so that you can write an amazingly authentic chapter. What I say when it comes to about self-care, and actually it's not my words, it's actually, I was watching Queer Eye the other day, which is an amazingly positive show, and they must have said it like 3 or 4 times. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. Progress, not perfection. And so many times we look for perfection. We have to do it 100%. Wait a minute, are you 1% better today than you were 2 days ago or yesterday? So excellent, great discussion on self-care. Thank you guys so much for that. I love all of the things that you're typing in there. Keep them coming. Throughout the course of today's session, we're going to do a couple more chats, and I hope you guys can capture some of that and take that and add that to your own list of self-care items. So that's the self-care piece. It's your foundational piece, and obviously you keep evolving it. So the next piece is really all around clarity. I call it the knowing. Some degree of clarity in terms of what is this next chapter going to be all about? And when you think about books that you love, right? Books that you just can't put down because they're so enticing and so exciting. There is a clarity to how they're written. There's a clarity around who the characters are and what the setting is and what the plot is. And so you get so engrossed in the book that you don't want to put it down. Well, you want that same level of clarity when you think in terms of writing your story and your next chapter. You've built the foundation of self-care. You guys are already doing some amazing stuff about that. Now it's all about doing some inner reflection. So you have a better understanding of who you are. So you have that clarity, that knowing of who you are and what you want to do. It's all about matching the who you are with what you're putting your effort and energy into. As I mentioned before, I told you a little story about kind of how I got into the business I'm in. It took me a while, no doubt. And a lot of that was because I was trying to do what others wanted me to do. And I wouldn't change things. Every experience I had was great. I wouldn't change any of that. However, my problem was I was trying to fit into a mold. I wasn't being who I was being who I was supposed to be. And there was my disconnect. I wasn't fully connected to me. And so therefore, I didn't know that I wasn't being me. I was doing what I was supposed to do, right? Because I didn't know the difference. So the clarity is all around understanding yourself so much better, and not yourself in terms of a moniker, of a label, like a title. So many times when we describe ourselves, it's I'm a mom, or I'm an accountant, or I'm a bookkeeper, or I'm a whatever, right? Fireman, etc. Go down the list. Or people might answer that question by stating who they want to become going down the line in the future. So no, it's all about the current present moment and who are you right now, and who are you at the core. And the core is without influence from environment, whether that be people or the physical environment, etc., because that impacts how we respond, how we act, how we move forward, and who we think we are. So peel back the layers, and that's the hard part. Peel back all of that influence from environment and people around you and identify who are you. And so when I think about who I am, and I always label this with my current answer, because I'm evolving. We all are evolving. We're not static beings. My current answer is this: I'm a lover of the earth and the bounty that it provides. I am deeply rooted in the belief that all people have great potential. I'm a creative being, and I am strong in mind, body, and spirit. I am kind and compassionate to myself and others. That's my who right now. In a couple of days, it may change, hard to say. So now I'd like you to ponder a couple of things so that you can start to write your who. I don't expect you to get it fully finished out today during this call, but get some things going. So what I'd like for you to do is think about these questions. First off, remember this is without external influences. Answer the question, what brings you joy? You joy, not anybody else in your family, not anybody else at work. What brings you joy? What fulfills you so that when you do it, it just is amazing. You feel that sense in your body that this is fulfillment, like this is where you need to be. And then think outside of your current standing. Think in terms, don't think in terms of current titles. So many times when I talk to people about careers, they think in terms of titles. Think in terms of what is really neat and fun and innovative and just gets you energized. So those are the things I want you to kind of think about. We're going to take a minute or two, just going to give you some quiet time so that you can think about these three questions and answer your who. All right, so we're just going to pause for a moment. We'll give you about another minute. And don't worry about it being a full paragraph. It can just be a couple of statements that resonate with you. Okay, so I know it's only been a couple of minutes, but I'm curious if you are interested in sharing maybe one or two of your statements into the chat box so other folks can see what types of things people are writing. I'm curious what people have come up with regarding their who statement. So if you're willing, go ahead and type that into the chat box. Taking a next dive into listening and learning a new level. Oh, that's great, Paula. Thank you. Sandra, I am light and love, full of creative potential. It sounds very lively. Wonderful. Thank you, Sandra. Elizabeth, a lifelong learner and an explorer of new things. I love the words all of you are choosing. This is great. Thank you. I think you all are off to a great start. And when it comes to statements like this, I know that they're not easy to come up with quickly. So what I like to say when I do any kind of writing is you write it and then let it cook, like walk away from it. You guys are all learning a lot in today's sessions. And I'm sure some of the other sessions that you're attending are going to add to your who statement. And so what I would say is for you to kind of schedule some me time this week within a few days of this summit and put everything together and then revisit your who statement again, your who statement ideas, and see how it has evolved just in this short time. So I think you guys are off to a fabulous start. Thank you for sharing. So that's the clarity piece of it. And it's really important to have some degree of clarity in terms of a direction. Otherwise, you're going to end up being all over the map, and it makes it harder for you to write that next chapter. So you have your self-care, you have your clarity. Now it's about vision. And the thing that I think is really interesting about vision is all about future and possibilities. It's all very positive. Like, what are the possibilities? The challenge that I think we have as humans is that we oftentimes put a lot of limits on those ideas, right? You see somebody will throw out an idea, it's like, oh, we don't have the budget for it. Or somebody will throw out an idea, no, we can't do that. We don't have the time for it. Or no, so-and-so won't like it, right? You hear that stuff all the time, that people, we are constantly, myself included, putting limits on what we can and cannot do, which what that does is it blocks our view of the potential vision, right? So we want to be careful about putting any kind of limits on visions. We want to be able to see all the possibilities. We want to see things that we haven't seen in forever because we had blocks on them. We had limits on them. So my evolving vision, again, is very simple. Live every moment as a guide, supporting others to achieve their greatest potential. I didn't want to put a label on it or a limit on it in terms of a title or a position, but living as a guide to me was a broader brush. I might change it, who knows, but for now, that's where I have it. So again, we've got a couple of reflection questions for you when it comes to vision, and it's a no limits vision. What have you always wanted to do? You've always wanted to do it. What do you bring to the table now? The skills, the attributes, the qualities, the characteristics. And what's keeping you from doing what you've always wanted to do? I want you to just think about those for a second. They're big questions, right? What have you always wanted to do? May or may not seem achievable, but maybe there's something in there, again, in terms of possibilities. Don't limit it. If you've always wanted to be an airline pilot, maybe being an airline pilot isn't realistic, but can you get into the airline industry? So this is why we don't want to put limits on it. We want to make sure that you're seeing all the potential possibilities. Maybe you want to open your own business. Great. What does that mean? And so you keep evolving it. As soon as you put limits on answers to any of these questions, what happens is it stops the brainstorming and it stops the dialogue. It's like somebody telling you no to whatever idea you threw out there. They say no, guess what? That idea is dead on the table. So a few years ago, I decided I wanted to go for my coaching credential, my coaching certification. So I presented the idea to my manager at the time. He didn't say no, but I could tell he was skeptical. And he asked me to do research. So I did research and I brought it back to him. And then he asked me more questions and I went and got the information and brought it back to him. The dialogue never stopped. We kept going and kept going. And then he did eventually say yes. So that's what I mean about making sure you're not putting limits on answers to these questions. Take a moment, think about these. I'm not going to ask you to put them into chat because I think these are deeper questions that take a little more time to evolve and to resonate through. But I do want you to think about them in context with everything else we're talking about today and everything you're seeing in all of the other sessions. So, all right, we've talked about self-care. We've talked about clarity. We've talked about vision. There's two more elements that we want to talk about. This was actually my favorite one. Put yourself in the place of most potential. So this statement came from DeWitt Jones. DeWitt Jones is a National Geographic photographer, amazingly gifted, but he's also a leadership speaker, and he marries his world of photography, vision, and creativity with the world of leadership. If you've ever wanted to see his stuff, he's got a website, of course. I would Google him and check him out. But this idea of putting yourself in the place of most potential. If you listen to the words he's chosen, he's not saying get someone to put you in the place of most potential. He's not saying for somebody else to give you the potential, right? So I hear an awful lot, of course, in my career that people are waiting for, oh, my manager didn't promote me. My manager didn't, right? It's always somebody else. Again, somebody else is owning your career. This is about you. So this statement is very action oriented. It's you putting yourself in the place of most potential. So when you think in terms of this overall vision, this overall clarity that you have for your next chapter, writing your next chapter, how do you put yourself in that place of most potential? What do you need to look at? So there are a few elements that DeWitt puts into it, and I've added a couple of my own. First is all about training. He uses the phrase, train your technique. So that's build the skill set. Whatever skill is needed. If you're going to run your own business, do you have the skills or the people, the connections to help you with managing that business? If you're going to be a photographer, do you have the skills to be a photographer? Like train the technique for whatever it is that you want to do. So that's one thing in terms of putting yourself in the place of most potential. The other one is who's in your tribe? Who can help you either network or help you with skill sets or just be there as a sounding board, or who also wants to do similar work and you guys can partner together, or. So who is in your tribe that you can rely on? Then what visibility opportunities do you have? So visibility opportunities are opportunities for you to get your name out there. And typically they're volunteer, right? You don't get payment for them. So just recently, I did a free webinar for the Association for Talent Development. Got my name out there, got some exposure, had some great conversations, and it is sparking more work and connections within that organization. So what are those visibility opportunities you have, whether they be in your community or in your industry or small business association or making sure that you have that visibility component. And then what are your development opportunities? How can you grow? What can you grow into? And how do you do that? So Sandra, I see your note in terms of networking is the most difficult thing for you. You know what? It's not easy, is it? Putting yourself out there with all these people you don't know, or how do you get connected with them? It's very difficult. Here's what I would suggest. So there's a couple of things that I have used, and I so appreciate you throwing the question out in the middle. I love this. This is great, because I'm betting you're not the only one. So a couple of things when it comes to networking. First off, use your immediate circle first and see if they can't get you like one layer out. So a good friend of mine connected me with this lady, Marie, who has turned out to be a really good connection for me. And she's also helping me with my coaching practice as well. So it means like, so if you can get your immediate circle to connect you one layer out, just one person, then that can connect you even further. The second thing would be to see if there's a local association for whatever profession you're interested in, or if it's a small business association, and try to go to one of those open houses. And yes, that's a big one because it's a whole lot of people you don't know. And trust me, the first time I went to the local ATD chapter meeting, I sat in the car for 15 minutes before I was like, okay, I need to muster up the energy and I need to walk in. And I need to be my best self because I'm good. And you have to really be confident in yourself and stay as long as you can and participate as long as you can, and then leave when you're comfortable and just try to make one connection. That's why I go back to that statement of you do you, right? You don't have to jump into the deep end of the pool. Go to that association, meet one person, maybe only do the networking piece. Don't stay for the topic of the day, and then leave until you're comfortable with that. Figure out where that line is. I would also say LinkedIn. Tap into LinkedIn, and there's tons of resources online on how to use LinkedIn. That'll allow you to connect with people around the country. But I would start with your immediate community as well. I'm happy to chat with you further and brainstorm some more. I'm curious if anybody else on this webinar, if you have additional ideas for Sandra, to just go ahead and type them into the chat box, because I think this is all about the greater community piece, right? So those are just some of my initial thoughts, and I hope some of those resonated with you, Sandra. I appreciate you putting the question out there. Excellent. So yeah, development opportunities. Oh, that's interesting. You can't see what other people are writing. All right, so as I see anything come in, I will verbally share it, because I can see everybody's writing. That's interesting. I'm not sure what's preventing you from seeing everybody's. And Rochelle, I don't know if you can assist with that or not.
I'm looking into it right now.
Great. Thanks so much, Rochelle. Appreciate it. Excellent. So the whole idea of putting yourself in a place of most opportunity. Great. Thank you. Paula has suggested Facebook groups. That actually sometimes is less intense than LinkedIn groups. So I think that's a good place to start. Thank you, Paula. When you think in terms of putting yourself in place of most opportunity, you just want to work on, again, one of these things, right? Right? How can you train your technique? How can you expand and look at your tribe? How can you work on visibility options and just get yourself out there a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and just keep working on that each day. And thank you, Julianne. The comment came in a little speech bubble on the iPad. Appreciate that very much. So when you think in terms of this idea of doing something, I'm curious, we'll kind of keep on that brainstorming path in terms of the chat box. If anybody has any other ideas to continue this conversation, you've got Facebook groups, right? What other ideas do you guys think of when it comes to putting yourself in that place of greatest opportunity or most opportunity? Thanks, Rochelle. In terms of everybody seeing your messages, you have to select all panelists and all attendees when posting. Great. Excellent. So think about that from a brainstorming perspective. And I would also suggest just like talking with somebody else to say, who do you network with? So Paula, utilize free or low cost online sessions and be prepared to, oh, this is fabulous, right? Because you're right, there are tons of learning opportunities and networking opportunities online in your industries, in your profession, but you do have to be prepared to say, no, I don't want to buy the extra stuff. There's tons of free stuff. So that's great. Excellent. All right. So put yourself in a place of most potential. And then after that, and this to me is the most important piece, receive. It is amazing what's right in front of us, and sometimes we're just not willing to receive it. So I recently, actually last week, had a session with my coach, and she kept telling me, why are you pushing that gold coin away that's right in front of you? And she was speaking about me being fully invested in my coaching business. She's like, you have it. It's right there. Why you keep pushing it away? Because you want a corporate job. So we can't see the forest for the trees thing. This happens to us all quite often. So, and Julianne, you just posted, you had a mental block when you were in an upholstery course. Teacher does the classes everywhere. He offered a teaching opportunity, but the thought of it freaked you out. So there's a gold coin for you, right? It's right there. What is keeping us from grabbing hold of it? What's keeping us? What's freaking us out about it? What's scary about it? And it's a lot of it's fear, right? When I decided to launch my coaching business, and it was been now just about a year ago, I never truly believed I could do it full time. And I was afraid of doing it full time because I wanted the security of a regular check coming in, et cetera. And now I'm holding on to that gold coin now because I'm enjoying every minute of it and doing opportunities like this where I can talk with all of you guys about things that matter to you and things that I love helping people with. So what about it when you think in terms of your next chapter? What's right in front of you? It may not be exactly what you were envisioning. Maybe it's a little different. Maybe it's something completely like you didn't expect it, like the upholstery teaching that Julianne mentioned. But when you get those that kind of freak you out for that moment, ask yourself, is this an opportunity? Yes or no? It's a simple yes or no question. Yes, it's an opportunity. Okay. Is it an opportunity that gets me closer to what I want to do? Is it an opportunity that I would enjoy? Ask yourself those kinds of questions. And then if you can't come up with any reason not to do it, why not do it? Right? So doing this webinar today, this summit today, this was my gold coin. I get to interact with great people like you guys. I get to do what I love doing, and it gives me some visibility I didn't have before, but yet I was hesitant to grab hold of it in the beginning. So those are the things you want to be careful of when you talk about writing your next chapter, in as much as it's about seeking out and networking and building community, tapping into alumni events, all of that. It's also about being fully present in what's happening right now, right in this moment. What's right in front of us that we're either ignoring or we're pushing aside or we're just not seeing. And being more tuned in and more aware of that with which is right in front of us and has been for a while. So what we've done over the last 40 minutes or so is gone over this 5-element framework, as I mentioned, where we focused on self-care, we focused on clarity, vision, putting yourself in the place of most potential, and then on receiving, when something may not be exactly what you're looking for, but it is truly a gift and truly an opportunity for you. I'm curious, before we bring it to a close for today, if there are any questions about writing your next chapter. You can go ahead and type those into chat. Okay. You can go ahead and keep typing if you're in the middle. I haven't seen any come in. So with that, I'm going to move forward, but I'm going to keep an eye on chat. So when it comes to you and your story, first off, know that your story is valuable and you need to write it. You need to own it. It is yours to write, nobody else's. And it is going to be amazing as long as you do you. So Sandra writes, I would like to do something totally different than what my career path has been. Any suggestions to start with a whole new career focus? I think that is brave and so exciting. The first step I would say is look and see what items in your previous career do link to what your future career is. There's always a connectivity. I worked with a person who is a political campaign expert, and she just in her volunteer work, and she worked in IT in her career, and she never put the political stuff on her resume. And I was like, why? Look at all the project work you're doing in the political thing. Look at all the influencing you're doing in the political thing. So I got her to connect the dots. And so the first thing I would say is connect the dots. The second thing I would say is find one person who's in the career you are looking to focus in and just have coffee with them, virtual coffee, and tap their brain. And do those two things to kind of kickstart getting into that direction. Okay? All right. So we're coming down to the last minute and a half, and I want to keep true to that time. You all have an amazing story to write. I'm so excited for all of you in terms of what you're looking to do, whether it's keeping on the same path or going in a completely new direction. Those are amazing stories. I cannot wait to read. Again, here's my name, Denise Sutter, and my contact information if you're interested in reaching out and carrying the conversation on further. I hope you have an amazing rest of the summit, and I hope you have an amazing weekend. Thank you guys so much for your time.